Hey there, listeners. Well, I've heard there's a terminology out there that's got consistency wins the game. We hear that all the time. And what does it mean? Well, last week, the podcast went number one in the management category in New Zealand, and it's exciting. But a lot of people ask me why, and I think the answer is consistency does win the game. So let's discuss.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the Ask Denis episode. This is a freestyle episode where I'm asked a question by our listeners, or I share my thoughts, experiences, and insights from working with many leaders around the globe. Well, what a massive week it's been. So I want to say thank you to everybody because the episode, or the actual podcast, I should say, Leadership is Changing, did actually go number one in the management category under the business category in New Zealand under Apple Podcasts. And so it's really quite wonderful to see it happen. And so today we're going to be talking about that. Consistency wins the game. And we want to talk about this and discuss about it today. But as I said, it's been an amazing week. I facilitated some workshops with different groups and different sizes. And one of them had about 100 leaders in the room, and the energy in the room was just fantastic. The other thing too is by going number one in New Zealand, it just takes the podcast to another level again with more credibility. And it's been really amazing because 4 years ago, the world went into lockdown. And this is the anniversary of that 4-year lockdown as well with the pandemic. And that's when I actually decided the podcast. I had a whole lot of gigs or workshops and things like that were cancelled due to lockdowns and organizations not wanting to do things, not sure what was going to happen next, where life was going, where business was going. And so I wasn't able to. Well, I could have sat down on the couch all day watching Netflix, but I decided to actually think about things and about where I wanted to go because I had all this free time. In doing so, I have this passion, this love for interviewing people. And it's a little bit like Parkinson, who's an interviewer from many, many years ago. Great guy, and I really wanted to be like him. And the other thing too is by actually interviewing people, not only do I help my voice being heard, but their voice as well, but also the listener's leadership voice being developed by listening to these podcasts or these episodes. And so that's where I decided to launch a podcast. And during March, April, and May, I actually was preparing and getting ready and interviewing people. And in June, we launched it. And coming up to the 600 episodes coming up. And the 4-year anniversary is coming up very soon as well, right? And we kicked off with episode 1 with the former CEO of Air New Zealand, a guy called Christopher Luxon, who now happens to be the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And so it's just great to have him there at the beginning and being one of the guests, but also interviewed a whole of other great guests too, as we launched a guy called Travis Chappell, somebody who helped me actually launch, and a great guy. As I said, nearly 600 episodes, close to 300 guests being interviewed, listeners all over the world. We have people coming from different demographics around the world, different countries, first of all. Number 2 is different levels or different organizations. So it's not just all corporate. There's a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, but it's also community leaders and it's also sporting leaders as well, which is really great. So you're getting people at all different levels within the organizations, but also different backgrounds and different countries, which is brilliant. And so I want to thank you as the listeners and also the guests and the support crew, the team that helped me bring this together, the graphic designers, the podcast production team and others, because it takes a team to actually pull something like this together, and we have so much fun in doing so. I actually have heard from a lot of people to say that really, some have called me Mr. Consistency. Others have said, you're just consistently showing up. And that's the beautiful thing about it. I think that what we've done is we've actually gone and delivered episodes. We've turned up every single week to deliver episodes. We did take 1 week off throughout the 4 years, but every other week we've been there delivering episodes as well. Episodes with quality, episodes with great guests, episodes with value, teaching, learnings, insights being shared with everybody who has actually taken time to listen. The other thing is about following your passion. So following your passion is a big thing. For a lot of people, they're probably doing things in life right now that either they're bored or they're not doing something that they love. If you know what your passion is, what your purpose is, what the thing you love doing, it never feels like work. It just feels like you are doing something that you love doing, right? And if you can do it on a consistent basis, that's a great thing. So consistently showing up is a key thing for leaders to think about, business owners to think about, people to think about, because that is something that we should be doing all the time. Consistently showing up in your relationships and consistently showing up in the networking that you haven't done or you want to do but you need to do. Remember, build it before you need it. And if you're consistently showing up, that's a good thing. Look, I had people telling me that I was wasting my time in doing this podcast. I had some other very close mentors ask me the question, really questioning me on whether I should be doing this and really wanting to spend time to do it. And I had thought about it and so forth and told them where I was thinking things were going. And so I did it. And we've gone off and done things. In fact, I said I'll probably do it for 1 to 2 years just to see how it goes. But I want to do that 1 year, 2 years, consistently showing up, but also doing it really well. And it's just great to see how things have moved on. So when you're actually looking at doing something, and that's anything in life, always look at the people around you. Are they doing this, or do you need to get and find other people to be around? So I mentioned before about networking. It's really important that we are consistently growing our networks and being around people who can help us and who can develop us. I'm not talking about going out and getting a network just to go out and sell things to people and get things from people, because it's a two-way street, right? You've got to be able to do things for others as well. Now, what I wanted to do was to launch a podcast, but I didn't want it just to be a podcast. The stats out there show that most people give up their podcast after episode 7 to 10, right? So 7, 8, 9, or 10, they give up. There's a small percentage of people in the world, very small, who are at the level that we are at in the way of over 500 episodes now, going very close to 600. And so I wanted to do something that was just big and on a large global scale that can actually make impact or have impacts in helping people around their leadership. The thing is, I went to the number 2 and number 10 podcasters in the world and asked them to teach me, show me, develop me. And I went into their programs. I went and learnt. And the thing I got to say is that the important thing here is that you are willing to consistently show up and learn from people who are world class, who are people who are doing things that they're doing it very well. Yes, you could start a podcast. You could look at a few YouTube channel videos and things like that. But how do you take it to a different level? That's the really interesting thing. Reading and learning and understanding how the podcast industry works was something that I did and I continue to do as well. So you as a leader consistently showing up in a positive, professional, and curious manner will help you win the game. See, poking it with a stick just to see if it works or give it a go isn't going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to work for you. Now, for some of you who may be listening to this, you may have done that or you are doing that currently. Poking it with a stick isn't going to work. It's going to take that commitment. It's going to take that time on a consistent basis. You can poke it with a stick, and some people, that's why they give up after 7, 8, 9, or 10 episodes, is because they give it a go, but they realize it's quite a lot of work. But there's that. Is there a willingness to keep coming up every week and showing up every week to keep doing the same thing? Probably not, right? But then I got to ask the question, is that what they're doing on a consistent basis? Not just with the podcast, but everything else in business, in their life. Are they consistently showing up and giving it a little bit of a go, but then giving up on it and moving on to the next thing? Well, yep, there's the consistency working again. Doesn't mean it's always a good thing. But we remember what I'm talking about here is about you turning up on a positive, professional, and curious manner. Has there been days, has there been weeks where I've gone, I'm tired, or I don't want to do it, or do I have to do it? Yes, there definitely has been times like that. But what have I done is I've gone back to the why. Why am I doing this? The big picture, understanding that, because then that has turned around and helped me put things in place. When I'm feeling a little bit tired, I start thinking about the listeners. I actually start thinking about that one person out there that might need this episode, this interview with a person, or the Ask Dennis, the freestyle stuff. Is there one person that may need that today, tomorrow, and in the future? There's people who are picking up this podcast now. They're starting to listen from episode 1 onwards. There are people who haven't heard about the podcast. There's lots of people like that. And so they are starting to learn. The podcast has become a go-to asset now. In other words, people are coming to it to find out about leadership and things like that. What's going to be very, very good in the sense of being smart about things going forward is that A, the listeners will be able to pick up things and learn more. But B, it's about us using technology now to help with the podcast, to help our listeners find things probably easier. After nearly 600 episodes, people go, "Pooh, it's overwhelming." They don't know where to start. And I always go, start wherever you like. The thing here would be, how do we actually put something in place to actually help people find content, the material, the topics quickly? And that's a very important thing for them to think about as well. The one thing I understand is that being consistent is one thing, but taking massive action consistently is the next big thing. And if you can do it, as I said earlier on a large scale, if you can lead big, if you can lead bigger, if you can lead that's actually scalable but is world-class, just imagine where you could go. You may not be at that position right now. And even those people who are at those positions, they continue to keep working at it. The professional basketball player many years ago, Kobe Bryant, just talked about the fact that getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning and getting out there, and he gave this sort of example, and you can Google this on YouTube, and he talks about his times of training, right? So if he got up around 7, 8 in the morning, he could probably only get 2 training sessions in a day. But if he's getting up at 4, he more than likely could get 3 or 4 actual training sessions in the day. Most people are doing 1 training session a day, or maybe 1 training session a week. But the thing is, if you could double that on a consistent basis, you will be so much further than others. And it wouldn't be today that you're further than others. It'd be in the future. It'll be an area whereby you will start to see things start to flourish. And you will see the fruits of your work, the things that you're sowing today and doing today. But if you keep sowing something in the ground, like a little tree or a little seed, and you put the seed in, but if you keep giving it nurture, water, fertilizer, things to help it grow, it starts to grow and it starts to get bigger. And so if we give more attention to it on a consistent basis, that's what's going to really help. I'm a great believer that consistency does win the game. And if you are wanting to do something today, in the future, and you're needing some help to understand what you need to do around that consistency, or you want someone to be there to help you launch anything, doesn't have to be a podcast, could be anything you're wanting to do. If you wanted to go and get a bigger role, if you want to go and start your own business, feel free to reach out to me because I'd love to have a chat to you about it, because I get a big kick out of helping people go off and do something bigger and be successful in doing it, but also knowing that they're going to learn along the journey and they're going to grow as well, and happy to be here to help them do that. Well, there you go, listeners. It's always a pleasure being with you. And I'm going to ask you to, as your call to action, is to go to the episode on Spotify, or the podcast on the Spotify or Apple. You know that we're on most platforms around the world, right? So your favorite podcast platform, we're on there. But I'd love you to put a review. Normally I ask you 5 stars. So if you click the 5 stars and then type in a review, I would really appreciate that. That and following the podcast on Apple Podcasts, because you can't really do it on Spotify. You can do a review and you can follow it on Spotify. But Apple has some charts whereby we see the biggest podcasts and the followings and so forth. Spotify has it as well. But if I can get you to get others to follow. Now, in the show notes is the links. Well, you can actually just see the links to either on your platform or so forth. On social media, you'll see me posting different episodes, but I actually put in there sometimes the actual episode links to Apple and Spotify. If you can get people to go to the podcast and listen and follow the podcast on Apple and also on Spotify, that would be wonderful. It would really help. So the reviews, clicking the stars, and also writing a review, just has to be a few words, what you're getting out of the podcast, or why you like it. And then the other one is sharing the podcast with other people and sharing it with either the link from Apple or the link from Spotify. That would be really, really cool. Hey, well, thanks for joining me. It's always a pleasure being with you. And until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.